There's an African proverb that says, if you want to travel fast, travel alone. But if you want to travel far, travel together. So let's talk about community. Hey, what's up? I'm Ken. This is kenfuTV, and each week I release videos in the martial arts, philosophy, technique, training, that sort of thing. So if that's what you like, if that's what you're into, I'm glad you're here. Hope you stick around. Hope you subscribe. If this has value for you, if you enjoy this, I hope you share it with somebody who you think would also enjoy it. So for today's Shirts and Patches segment, opened the mailbox the other day and had some stuff from Les Bubka. So I'll start with the shirt, because the shirt I already had, but a lot of you have asked about it. I wanted to make sure that you knew where you could go get some. So if you want to harness the power of Hikite, then you want to head over to lesbubka.co.uk. That's also where you're going to find his books and stuff. Speaking of books, he also sent over a copy of his latest book, Thoughts on Karate. Really excited to read this. Been looking forward to for a while. Really great stories and stuff. It's a bunch of short stories, collection of articles that he did. On the holidays, he did a digital thing where he sent out and was sharing out digital copies of it. But this was a very cool surprise, something I'm very excited about. In it, he says, "Hey Ken, thanks for your support. Hope this book will be thought-provoking." His books always are, and I'm looking forward to it. Now I've got 2 books that I need to do. I got to catch up on my episodes about books, and Les's books will be amongst those. So with the theme of this segment, he also sent along this patch. This is the Shin Aido patch. Now he sent along a note, and if you're gonna send shirts and patches, I hope that you also send along a note. And he says that this patch, the Shin Aido, he says it has 2 meanings. First, the way of true harmony. Shin Aido, right? Do being the way, Shin being true, and I being harmony. So the way of true harmony. Everything coming together, which if you know Les, you know that that is just a perfect explanation. Now the second translation is Makoto Aimichi, which means sincere teaching, and I think that's really awesome. I love things that have 2 meanings. I think that's really great. So in this case, you have a patch that represents the way of true harmony, but also represents this sincere teaching, and I think that that's a really great combination of things. And like I said, if you know Les, you know that these are perfect. They're perfect harmony for Les. So again, shirts, patches, books. I don't know about patches. I'm just used to saying that now. So anyway, if you want to harness the power of Hikite, if you want to read one of Les's books, then I hope that you jump over to lesbubka.co.uk in order to find all of what he's doing, keep up with him, and make sure to subscribe to his channel. Make sure to check out everything that he's doing, because he's just doing really great stuff. So let's throw this on the wall. Little by little, this studio is starting to take on a new shape and to represent so many cool things, which will actually be perfect for today's episode. But real quick, first, if you want to send over some shirts or patches and you want to tell your story so that I can share that story and what's going on with the stuff that you guys have doing and help have that be featured and represented inside this space on this channel, then you can shoot me an email at shirtsandpatches@kenfu.tv. I'll get you an address, you can send it over, and then I'll feature it on these videos. Just a little bit of my way of giving back. So now let's get started talking about today's topic, the topic of community, and in this case, specifically the martial community. But if you follow this channel, then you know that everything I talk about is universal, and it will fit and it will drop into whatever you've got going in your life. Whatever that community means to you is what it's going to be. Now, when I started this channel with the intent to maybe share my journey, but mostly to chronicle my thoughts. It was a better way for me to journal. It was a way for me to record things as they were, as they are, as they might be someday, and just put together a living history of my journey in the martial arts. And if nothing else, leave something for my students to have. And so that way, when I'm long gone, there'll be some kind of history. That's not something that I have a lot of for my instruction of where I came from and for my teachers. I have more stuff now because I record more things now, but when I was coming through it, when I was training, that stuff, we didn't do that, and it doesn't exist. So I didn't want that to be the same. So we've recorded classes. I've got a library of classes that we've recorded. I've got stuff like this channel where I'm talking and giving my thoughts and the things that are going on. And that was what this started out to be. What I didn't realize is that it would open up an opportunity for me to grow, as a person. I'm not a person who likes to stand in front of a camera. I was a photographer, and the old rule of being a photographer is you become a photographer because you want to be behind the camera. Certainly not motion pictures and audio. Just like everybody else, I hated hearing my own voice on a recording. I hated seeing my own face. I hated all of that stuff, just like most people do, I think. So it created an area of growth for me to grow beyond that and to start to appreciate myself more and to appreciate what I have to offer, and also gave me the ability to reflect on who I am, which is a big deal. I think more time should be spent making those kinds of reflections. But the amazing thing I didn't expect, admittedly, I didn't expect that. The thing I didn't expect was to meet so many great people. To go from having all of these people out in the world that I see that are doing videos or doing different things, just be aware of them, to having conversations with them, to in some cases becoming friends with them, to sometimes training with them, different things. Like, so many opportunities have opened up. So many things that I never thought I would get or have has happened because of starting this channel. So I share my thoughts, you guys share your thoughts back, and we have this awesome ability to communicate and to grow and shape this stuff together and to connect in a way that doesn't happen. You know, a lot of times especially when I think back, schools, you went to your school and you trained in that school and you knew all the people in that school. You maybe had sister schools or something like that, and you maybe had other dojos you were affiliated with if you traveled or something, and that was kind of it. You knew those little niche families. And we're becoming global, we're becoming universal, we're becoming connected in a way that's so far beyond what it's ever been. And that's incredible. And that's why I want to give back. That's what the whole Shirts and Patches segment is to be able to give back to the people who are watching this and be able to use what I'm doing as a platform to share other people who maybe aren't doing their own thing yet. You should do your own thing too. Yeah, that's the Shirts and Patches. The comments at the end, same thing. I want to be able to highlight people who are not me and take advantage of the fact that this channel has become a connecting point. And that's just so cool. So that's the intent. So in 2021, that's kind of my intent to grow the channel, is to build in ways that incorporate more people and incorporate featuring other people in the martial arts, especially people who aren't featured other places. That's something that I really want to be able to do more of. But I also want to use this channel to encourage people to pick up your phone and record your own something. Just start. Yeah, I was a photographer, so I went crazy. I had lights, I had cameras, I had all this stuff, and I set it up. I'm also an IT guy, so the computer side and all of that. It was easy for me to set up something that was a little bit different production value, and sometimes seeing that production value can make you feel like you shouldn't start because you're not ready to hit that mark. No. Don't let that be your guide. Don't let that be the situation. Just because I can, just because that's my experience and my knowledge, does not mean that your information is not important and that you shouldn't be sharing it. Every day I find more and more people who are, and I hope that you watching this choose to do so too. Even if it's just a little bit, you know? It's very cathartic to do it, to get these things out anyway, but then to also be able to connect and share what you're doing with other people who maybe you get the chance to meet later. There's just nothing like it. It's even created a lot of great opportunities for me inside of my local community. It's opened up conversations with my instructor and with other instructors and with my students, things that maybe we wouldn't have addressed or talked about necessarily the same way, but because these videos are happening, there's a platform for that discussion. Just a really awesome thing, just a really great thing that we can do. And there's nothing stopping us. The world is your oyster, as they say. But it doesn't end there. I've now connected and talked to people that I never thought I'd talk to, who I've admired for a long time, which is incredible. Got involved with Facebook groups and messenger chats and different things that have connected me with all kinds of people I didn't even know that I wanted to have in my life, but I have in my life now. One really neat moment that happened just the other day is we're in January, and at the end of the year, Ian Abernathy always does his end of the year podcast where he does a Q&A, everybody tosses in questions and he fires off his answers, which I think is really great, and I've always really enjoyed that. Truth be told, Ian Abernathy's podcast is a big part of why this podcast started. I ran out of the backlog of his podcast. I wanted more like it. I just was struggling to find what I was going to go to next, and I went, maybe I'll just make the thing that I want to hear. Maybe it's just time that I do it. And thus it began. So it was end of the year podcast. All these questions. Well, it was a really interesting moment this year when I'm listening as he's saying the names of the people asking questions, and I'm going, hey, I know that guy. Hey, I know her. Hey, oh, what did Brian have to say? What did Gareth have to say? And hearing all these names and realizing that over the last year or two, I've had the chance to meet these people. And these aren't just names anymore. These are people. I can think of what they look like. I can think of the kind of training that they do. I can think of the videos that I've seen of them doing stuff, or the questions they've asked, or the conversations we've had. And that's incredible. Something I never thought that I would have out of this. And then today, jumped into a Zoom session. We're in the midst of a pandemic, and Zoom training is a heck of a thing, and people are training more and more online. Jumped into what was called the Heavy Bag 10-rounder that had a handful of people. It was Brian Bates and Christian Vedevert and Chris Hansen and Kudo Mal and Andy Allen, all teaching their own different drills, and then having those run as a rep, and then hammering those out. Such an awesome way to train. Great seeing these combinations. Great seeing there were like 50 people that jumped in there and did it. And what a cool thing. These are people that I've admired or I've met over time and come to connect with, and then to be able to actually jump online and train with them and get to hear how they think about different things was just really cool. And these things are happening all the time. These events are happening more and more, and people are reaching out. And I know that I'm getting more contact from people to do more of these things myself. I know that I'm seeing other people doing the same thing, other people connecting with other people, and it's awesome. And your art is going to grow so much better, so much further than it ever would have on its own. Connecting with other people and seeing outside of that, to use a potentially controversial term, to see outside of that echo chamber of your own room, your own building, your own dojo, and being able to see where what you do fits in alignment with the world, and to see how all of this stuff ties together and the potential that it has, and the way to validate things and invalidate things, and to test things out and create connections to go train with other people. It's just incredible. Who you are and what you do and what you get out of this life is better with people. Going back to that proverb, if you want to travel fast, travel alone. Nobody to slow you down. But if you want to travel far, travel together, because the other people help you get further than you will on your own. Incorporate people. Share yourself. Put yourself out there. Set aside the parts of you that are worried. I constantly feel like an imposter. I feel like nobody should be looking at me because there are people who are better than me to go look at. And that's a real thing. Imposter syndrome is a real thing. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It doesn't mean that there aren't people that need to hear what you have to say. Or maybe even hear how you said it. Because maybe they've heard it 1,000 times a different way from somebody else, but hearing it from you this way, this time, is what it took for it to click into place wherever it was going to. So many opportunities. So many options. Start taking advantage of them. Put yourself out there and just enjoy this amazing life. And speaking of those connections, we'll jump to Future Ken, and we'll look at some comments from last week's video, which was very controversial in title. Maybe more on that later. It wasn't inaccurate, but it did upset some people. But there were lots of comments, and it was very valuable for me. So let's jump into those comments. Okay, here we are. We're talking about comments from last week's video. I threw away kata. I know, most of you hated that title. But when it comes to a grand syllabus, and you look at all of those things, I did throw away kata. I didn't keep everything. I didn't keep those requirements. But sometimes when you're in the kitchen and you need to throw out some grapes, it doesn't mean you don't have grapes. It just means you threw out some grapes, right? So there are so many comments, so I'm just going to highlight a few that really stood out to me to try to keep this a little short. I hope that you guys do jump in the comments, though, and have conversations with some of the people down here and read through some of the things that were said, because were really great things said. I'm going to start off with one of the important ones, one of the ones that really stood out. And this is not the only person who said this. There were a few people who said this, but John Deathlef said, "I love this concept. It's a great idea. However, I see one dilemma. Thinking about your legacy, who will be the next one who knows 100 kata and can guide others to ones that fit them?" That's a big deal. That's a big part of this process, and you're not wrong in that. Right now, there's a benefit of the students that the ones that are in a position to teach. So I think somebody asked if something happens to you. If something did happen to me, The people who are in a position to teach now were trained how I was trained, and they have more kata and more availability, plus my teacher is still around to continue to teach that stuff, and his teacher is still around to continue to teach that stuff. So those things are still here. As we continue, I think there'll be an awareness of the different katas, and the truth is, if it goes down far enough and not enough people catch on or get far enough to learn that, then there might be a bunch of people that come from me having just the Pinan katas and just the Nahachi katas. And that is something that I understood going into it, but I also believe that they're enough, and that when that's no longer enough, you'll find somebody who can take you further than that. And I certainly don't believe that my way, myself, or my school is the only way that people will ever learn their stuff and to grow. So students of mine will go on. They will find other places. They will learn other kata from another instructor, and that's part of the process as well. I don't know. Still fleshing it out. There's still a lot to think about there, but there's also time. There's time right now to get that figured out. Now, there were a lot of people who said that they agreed with this and loved this idea, and either wanted to do it but haven't done it yet, or have just started doing it themselves, or have been doing it for quite a while. And that was a surprise to me too, to get to see how many people, speaking of community, how many people were able to give me feedback and show me that I'm not alone in this. And so that's really awesome. There's so many people saying, hey, I want to do this, or how do I get there? Or here's what I've learned from how I've been so far. And I think that that's incredible. That was a very, you would think it would be obvious, but it was a surprising thing to me that really stood out and was incredible for me to be able to have so many people come out of the woodwork to support what I'm doing. Now, this was an interesting comment. I'm picking out this comment in particular from Jim Morrison. He left a couple different comments, but the first one had this part where he says, I don't practice Pinan anymore. Why? Because I teach them and I get better experience that way. Like you said, all kata are a complete system. Also, they feed back into each other. See, I want to stop on just that part. I don't teach Pinan anymore. I don't practice Pinan anymore because I teach it. And that's such an interesting thing, and it's such a true thing I think a lot of people will find, is that when you teach, there are things that you teach that you experience all the time. And so you do practice it in a way, because you're practicing while you're teaching, you're practicing while you're demonstrating, etc. But then when you have time to yourself, which I think is what he's referring to, when you have time to yourself, what do you practice? And you don't practice that because you do those all the time. And that's an important realization, is that in your own time, that you also have a small amount of. Focusing on the things that you don't get to spend time on in class is a huge key detail. So take advantage of the things that you do in class. Train different things when you're training solo so that it all comes together. I love that. So Jim, thank you. You had a lot of things to say, and I loved the things you had to say, but that particular one really stood out to me. Miel Surya says, many thanks for a great and helpful post, fresh and unconventional, yet traditional in the real sense. Yeah, I think so, and I think more people are realizing that what a lot of people are hung up on tradition was a more modern tradition, and some people, and the practical karate world specifically, is looking for that tradition that goes back older than that. And so I'm not doing something new. I'm not embarking on a new journey. These are things that existed. These are things that already happened. I'm very happy to see how many people in the comments are recognizing that, hey, this is what you're doing isn't new, but I'm excited that you're doing it, and I'm excited that I'm doing it too. So thank you for dropping that in there. Now, speaking of Les Bobka's in here too. He says, I've done exactly the same thing around 4 years ago, and I never looked back. The students love it. I have a set of kata, Pinan, Nahachi, Tensho, Sanchin, Saifa, Senchin, that every student needs to know. Then we choose 3 kata that they specialize in. After reaching black belt, they choose more complicated kata, but staying with 3 in depth. It's really cool to see that Les is on a similar path, doing similar things, and knowing that he's been at it for 4 years now. I need to spend some time talking with him and see what he's learned from the 4 years of doing it that way. Peter Kennelly says, Shotokan practitioner here, and I definitely agree with those concepts. Coming in from a dojo that unfortunately doesn't involve a whole lot of kata application, I've spent time in lockdown going through the bunkai for Teki Nahachi Shodan, and I have found that it is definitely a complete fighting system in itself. Since Shotokan is very sport karate long-range focused, it's very valuable having a kata teaching you closer range techniques and concepts such as different strikes, hooks, uppercuts, elbows found in the Teki kata, sweeps, and clinch positions. I think it's definitely more valuable to spend a good portion of time on fewer kata to learn their principles than fewer time on many kata, many different kata. I think that's an important moment anyways, just realizing the truth of the context of what you train and realizing where it fits and if it covers the things that you want it to do. And if it doesn't, and here, it sounds like you have an interest in the application. and you want to spend more time on that. And your school has more focus in the sport and the long range parts of it. And that doesn't mean you need to go somewhere else. It just means you need to do exactly what you're doing and explore and see where things overlap and fit, because that's how we grow. And recognizing the context, that was one of the big moments for me, was recognizing the context in which the knowledge that I gained had, and where it fit and where it didn't. Having a sport focus, there's nothing wrong with that. And having a self-defense focus, there's nothing wrong with that. But misusing things from each out of context can be problematic. And so understanding the context and understanding where that goes and establishing for yourself what's important to you and making sure that you spend time focusing on building that for yourself is huge. And so I wish you good luck. That's it this week. There's a ton of comments, and then this was shared on Facebook and stuff too, so there's even more comments out there. I encourage you to get in on the conversation, but for this week's video, we'll cut it right there and we'll jump back to the past, finish this conversation on community. And so that is it. That's it for today. I hope that you drop in the comments of this video and talk about what areas community is helping you and what places that people should be getting connected to, or even just introduce yourself. Start a conversation with somebody, comment on somebody else's comment, and get to know somebody. That's it for this week. If you like videos like this and you want to see more, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell. If you want to see a playlist of the videos that have already happened, right here, and a couple videos you might like right here. I'm Ken, this is kenfuTV, and I'll catch you in the next one.